Sure, here's section 1 of the script, written as a faceless, first-person infidelity short story with a minimum of 760 words. It follows the exact structure from the outline, keeps it tight and emotionally resonant, and avoids any scene directions. When the box arrived from my late uncle's attorney, I didn't think much of it. He was always a strange man, eccentric, isolated, full of cryptic sayings no one ever understood. Inside the box was a sealed mason jar, cloudy with age, and a folded note taped to the lid. It read, "Ask her to tell the truth." That was it. No context, no explanation, just that one unsettling line. I turned the jar over in my hands, curious. It looked ordinary. But something about it made the back of my neck prickle. I set it on the bookshelf and tried to forget about it. I told myself it was just some odd prank Harold planned before he passed. He had a dark sense of humor. But the more I looked at that jar, the more uneasy I felt. Like it was watching. Lena didn't say anything about it at first. She walked past it without blinking. Then 3 nights later, while we were both brushing our teeth, she asked, "Where did that come from?" I explained. She froze for a moment, then said, "You should probably just put that away." No smile, no sarcasm. Just straight to the point. It wasn't like her. I watched her more closely after that. Not because of the jar, but because of the way she'd been acting. Over the past few months, something had shifted. Her hugs were shorter. Her laughter had a different pitch. She stopped waiting up for me. She said it was work, stress, hormones. But I knew it wasn't just that. She'd started spending more time with her sister Zoe. Weekend visits. Last-minute errands. Always out of the house. At first, I didn't question it. I trusted her. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. We had built something solid, or at least I thought we had, but small things started bothering me. A phone call she'd cut short when I walked into the room. A forgotten charger that led me to her unlocked iPad, where I saw her browsing for cheap cabins 2 towns over. A bottle of wine in the trash I knew we hadn't opened together. I talked to Ryan about it. He's been my best friend since college. Always calm, always rational. He told me not to overthink it. Said I might be reading too much into the little things. "You know how women get when they're stressed," he said with a laugh. I didn't like how casually he brushed it off, but I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Lena's behavior grew more erratic. One night I woke up at 2 a.m. and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the living room, sitting cross-legged in front of the jar, whispering something I couldn't make out. She startled when I spoke her name. Said she couldn't sleep. She looked pale. After that, I moved the jar to the garage. But the next day it was back on the bookshelf. When I asked her, she said, "That's where it belongs." I asked why it mattered, but she didn't answer. She just walked into the kitchen and turned on the sink like I hadn't spoken. My curiosity turned into suspicion. I started watching her more closely. She was careful, but not perfect. One evening I noticed her phone buzzing constantly. I walked past and glanced at the screen. The message preview said, "He doesn't know, but be careful." No name. Just that one line. When I asked her who she'd been texting so much lately, she shrugged. "Zoe. She's going through some stuff." But something in her tone didn't sit right. Like she was reading from a script. The turning point came when I tried to access her laptop. It used to be open, always on. Now it was locked, password protected. When I asked for the password, she got defensive. Said I was invading her privacy. I reminded her we used to share everything. Her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. One night, I confronted her. Not about the jar, or the messages, or the laptop, just a simple, direct question. "Is there something I should know?" She looked up from her tea, blinked twice, and whispered, "It's not what you think." Then she stood up and walked away. But the thing is, I didn't know what to think. And the jar, still sitting in plain view, almost seemed to be mocking me. As if it knew what I didn't. As if it was waiting. Let me know when you're ready for section 2, 760 words. Here is section 2 of the Faceless Infidelity short story, with a minimum of 760 words, written in a concise, emotionally rich style, continuing directly from section 1. I wouldn't call it instinct. It was more like a quiet certainty that sat with me, refusing to leave. That morning, she left in a rush. Forgot her phone on the nightstand. She'd never done that. I stared at it for 10 minutes, telling myself I wouldn't look. But I did. The message was right there. Not hidden. He almost knows. Be careful. The contact name was blank. Just a number. I copied it and dialed from my work phone. It went straight to voicemail, Ryan's voice. Calm. Casual. My stomach twisted. I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, heart racing. I tried to tell myself it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I already knew. My best friend. The one person I had confided in. The one person who told me I was overthinking it. I didn't call him. I didn't scream or break anything. I sat in silence and waited. That evening, I acted like everything was normal. Lena came home, kissed me on the cheek, said she was tired. I nodded. Watched her disappear into the shower. That night, I searched the drawer next to her side of the bed. Underneath a scarf and a box of old receipts, I found a letter. The handwriting wasn't hers. It was Ryan's. I recognized the way he looped his GS. It wasn't dated, but it was recent. I wish we could stop hiding. I hate seeing you lie to him. You deserve better. We deserve to be real. It was short. Just that. No name, but it didn't need one. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to wake her up, to drag the truth out of her right then, but something stopped me. I needed more. I needed everything. The jar had been bothering me since day one. I went to the garage and brought it back inside. Held it under a lamp. I tapped the lid and felt a slight echo. It wasn't just glass. There was something inside. I twisted it, but it wouldn't open. Then I noticed the base, slightly loose. I pried it off with a screwdriver. A small flash drive slid out and clinked on the table. It was clean, labeled only with my name in faded marker. I plugged it into my laptop, hands sweaty, mouth dry. There were 6 video files. All dated over the last 4 months. Cabin. Same one Lena had searched on her iPad. I clicked play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Lena. Laughing. Pouring wine. Ryan's voice off screen, then his face entering the frame. He kissed her like it was the most natural thing in the world. She let him. Pulled him closer. I watched 5 minutes before I had to close the laptop. My stomach turned. I tasted acid. Every second on that screen felt like a nail being driven into something I used to believe in. And all this time, they let me confide in them. Smile at them. Trust them. The next day, I didn't say a word. I waited until dinner. Set the jar on the table between us. She glanced at it, then at me. I asked her plainly, "What do you want me to do with that jar, Lena?" She froze. Blinked. Her face paled. She asked where I got it. I told her it had always been here. That I finally opened it. That I knew. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. Just let out this long, exhausted sigh. Then she said, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." I stayed quiet. It wasn't just about him. I was lost. You were distant. I felt like I didn't exist anymore. He saw me. That was her justification. She said it like I was supposed to understand. Like I should accept it. Like her loneliness gave her permission. I asked how long. She said 7 months. I asked if she loved him. She hesitated. Then nodded. I didn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them could undo what I'd just heard. She looked at the jar again. Her hands trembled. "That jar, your uncle gave it to me once, before he died. He said I'd know when to give it back." I didn't think he actually knew. But he had. Uncle Harold had known. Somehow, he saw through everything. The flash drive was his insurance policy. His final gift. Or curse. I found one more file on the drive. A voice recording. Harold. Old, wheezing, direct. "If you're hearing this, then you found the truth. Burn it, and move on. Or face it, and let it change you." She asked what I was going to do. I didn't answer. I just stared at the jar, now empty. But heavier than ever. Let me know when you're ready for section 3, 480 words. Here is section 3 of the story, with a minimum of 760 words, written with the same tone, precision, and directness, concluding the arc without repeating earlier content. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe like nothing had changed. But everything had. She had told the truth, finally, but it didn't feel like closure. It felt like collapse. By morning, I had packed a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I left the jar on the nightstand, lid off, empty. I didn't take the flash drive with me right away. I couldn't. I needed space. Not just from her, but from everything, our house, our memories, the weight of pretending I didn't know. I stayed in a motel 2 towns over. Cheap bed, thin walls, nothing to look at. Just silence. I stared at the ceiling there, too. I thought about calling Ryan. I wanted to scream, to curse him, to ask him why. But the truth is, I already knew why. Because he could. Because he wanted to. Because she let him. She texted me every day for a week. First it was guilt. Then it was apologies. Then it was desperation. She said she made a mistake, that it wasn't love, that it was confusion. That she still wanted us. That she chose me, not him. I read every message and answered none. On the 7th day, she stopped texting. That silence was louder than any fight we could have had. I went back to the house after 10 days. She wasn't there. Her things were gone. A note was on the kitchen table. I'm staying with Zoe. I won't contact you again unless you want me to. It didn't say sorry. It didn't beg. It just ended, like us. I took the jar and the flash drive and drove out to the lake near Uncle Harold's old cabin. I sat on the edge of the dock with both in my lap. The water was calm, but the sky was grey, like it knew something had ended too. I held the jar over the water. Thought about how it used to be empty. Thought about how heavy it still felt. Thought about how something so simple could carry so much damage. I dropped it in. Watched the ripples spread until they vanished. The flash drive stayed in my pocket. I moved into a small apartment. 1 bedroom, no memories. Just clean walls and silence. I started therapy. I told the therapist everything, including the parts one was ashamed of, the suspicion, the spying, the bitterness that kept me awake at night. She told me betrayal doesn't just break trust. It breaks identity. She was right. I didn't know who I was without her. And I hated that. Weeks turned into months. I never saw Ryan again. I never tried to. He left our friend group. No one asked questions. Everyone knew something had happened, but no one wanted the details. Maybe they were afraid they could be next. Zoe reached out once. Said she had always suspected something but didn't want to hurt me. I told her not to blame herself. The truth is, we always see the signs. We just pretend there's something else until they slap us in the face. I still have the flash drive. It sits in a locked drawer I never open. Sometimes I think about destroying it. Sometimes I think about watching those videos again, just to remind myself that it was real. But I don't. Because remembering is enough. Because forgetting is impossible. People say time heals. That's not true. Time just buries. The pain doesn't go away, it just stops screaming. Sometimes I wonder what I would have done if Harold hadn't sent that jar. If I would have kept living in that lie, smiling across the table at people who saw me as a fool. I'm not thankful for the pain. But I'm thankful for the truth. Even if it shattered everything. I haven't seen Lena since she left. Part of me still wonders if she really loved him, or if she just needed someone to notice she was drowning. But then I remember, it doesn't matter. She chose to reach for someone else. Now, when I walk past mirrors, I don't see a husband. I don't see a victim. I see someone who knows what it's like to be broken and still stand up. The jar is gone. The trust is gone. The life I thought I had is gone, but I'm still here, and that has to be enough. Let me know if you'd like this compiled into a full script, formatted, or narrated voiceover style for a video. Here is section 4 of the story, with a minimum of 760 words, continuing with clarity, emotional progression, and without repeating previous content. 6 months passed before I heard her voice again. I was standing in the grocery store, comparing 2 brands of cereal when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered out of habit, and there she was. Calm, almost distant. She asked if we could talk, Not to fix anything, just to say things that had been left unsaid. I told her I'd think about it. For 2 days I did nothing. Thought about how her voice hadn't made me angry. Just tired. I wasn't sure if that was healing or numbness. Eventually, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our places. She looked older, or maybe just more worn out. She smiled like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. We didn't hug. Didn't pretend we were the same people. She thanked me for coming. I nodded and waited. She said she didn't want to justify anything. That she wasn't expecting forgiveness or closure. She just wanted me to know she'd been in therapy, too. That she'd realized she had spent most of her life avoiding discomfort, lying when things got hard. She said cheating wasn't just a betrayal of me, it was a betrayal of who she had promised herself she'd become. I listened without interrupting. There was nothing left to say that would change the past, but I could feel the weight in her voice. She wasn't lying anymore, at least not to herself. She asked if I hated her. I told her no. That hate requires energy. And I had none left for her. She nodded. Said she deserved that. We sat in silence for a long time before she spoke again. She asked if I still had the jar. I said no. She looked down. I asked why Harold gave it to her in the first place. She hesitated, then said he'd once found her crying on the porch of the cabin, long before we were married. She was still just the girlfriend then. He had told her, lies rot in silence. Truth waits in glass. She said she didn't know what he meant until much later. By then, it was too late. When she left that day, we didn't make promises. We didn't say we'd keep in touch. We just parted like two people who once believed in forever and ended up somewhere else entirely. Weeks after that meeting, I finally opened that drawer. Held the flash drive again. I didn't watch the videos this time. I didn't need to. But I opened the audio file one last time. Harold's voice: if you're hearing this, you've already lost something. Now decide what you're willing to rebuild. I listened to it twice. Then I erased the drive. Not to forget. Not out of forgiveness. But because carrying it wasn't strength anymore. It was weight. I started painting again. Something I hadn't done in years. It was messy and frustrating and quiet. But it gave my hands something honest to do. I painted the jar once, just from memory. A cloudy, imperfect glass with something invisible inside. I didn't hang it. I tucked it in the back of the closet, where it belonged. Not hidden, just finished. Sometimes people ask why I'm single. I tell them the truth: I'm not ready to build something I can't trust. That's not bitterness. It's clarity. Trust isn't built on promises. It's built on the silence between actions. And I've learned to pay attention to silence. I bumped into Ryan once. It was accidental, in a bookstore. He froze when he saw me, half-stepped behind a shelf. I could have walked away. But I walked up to him, looked him in the eye, and said, "Don't hide. That's not who I am anymore." He didn't apologize. Just mumbled something about mistakes and time. I didn't need the apology. I just needed to see his shame. And I did. That was enough. We didn't talk again. Years from now, no one will remember the jar, or the lies, or the fractured silence that followed. But I will. Not as a scar, but as a mark, a proof that I was blind and then I saw. That I loved, and then I lost. That I trusted, and then I learned, and somewhere in that slow unraveling, I became someone who doesn't run from the truth. Even when it breaks things. Especially when it does, because some truths aren't meant to heal. They're meant to wake you up, and I'm finally awake. Let me know if you'd like all 4 sections compiled into a single, polished script or formatted for voiceover narration.